honest with him, you know, and so we can get the things out of us that we need to, because if we don't, then we're destined to fail, you know. But you can see God's kindness, you can see his graciousness and his mercy toward Dawid, and that was, you know, that was excellent. So
yeah, that stood out to me too.
get
That
things out of us. Yeah,
so gracious, yeah, to let him give him the opportunity to see what he had done, you know.
yeah.
And of course, because of Dawid's heart, he quickly confessed.
He can, yeah. Wow, isn't that amazing? There was no delay.
Right.
There was no delay, and that's scary because he kind of like it was like a reality check. Like, okay, this is what's up. This is like who I really am. I've been found out by the Creator. You know, could you imagine getting a word from Yah?
I know, that's awesome.
But the fear, could you imagine the fear? That's why Nathan had assured him that, you know, you're forgiven.
Yeah.
And Yah goes into him. I didn't put all that in, there's too many slides, but Yah just goes into Dawid and says, look, I've done it all for you. You didn't have to do that. I gave you everything. You didn't have to do that. He's very disappointed in him, but Dawid, you know, he knew that the relationship had to go to another level. And I've been talking about, you know, for us to elevate. So, you know, we can't elevate to the next level if we're not being honest, you know, and just saying, okay, I do have, what are my issues? You know what I'm saying? You don't know that until the light comes in. So, you know, do we have to commit murder and adultery and all this kind of stuff before you get the light? No. Yeah, I've chosen Dawid to be that example. That's what's awesome, is that Yah has given us plenty of examples to show us how kind he is, considering the fact that he's never going to, you know, see us face to face in terms of, you know, how we see each other, but he'll speak to us and he'll let us know, you know, and that's just awesome. So welcome back. Yeah, I didn't know it was that many people. I didn't get a chance because I don't look at how many people are on there because I don't want to get, you know, overwhelmed. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was a lot. Thank you. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And could you imagine other people that are sitting there and listening? So there could be, you know, about 25 to 30 people, who knows? But that's all glorious to Yah, you know. I'm so excited for that. Because you only have a certain amount of time to do what you need to do. That's all you have, you guys, and this is it. And so sometimes we think we're making an investment into, you know, things that we're not getting nothing out of. And the truth of the matter is that when you make this investment, it's going to pay off. And if you can't see the results, I mean, just think about it. Abraham actually, he got a chance to see the land and he walked on it, but did he get a chance to really like say it's his? No, he didn't. He didn't get to see the 12 tribes of Israel. He didn't get any of that. But he was sustained knowing that, okay, this is something Yah's promised me. So we're going to continue our journey. And that's what I'm really excited about, is that I'm able to do this, why I can do it. You know, we left off from the last time in lesson number 14, part number B it was. I think we're on C now. But at any rate, what this is going to be talking about, and listen, this particular lesson right here, there's a lot of information. That's why it's taking so long to get through. We only have like 2 more chapters. We got 15 and 16, and then this book is done. And we're going to move over to the verbs on how they work in all the different, you know, placements of where the Nukud goes and where does the Kamats, and we're going to get into all that information, and, you know, we'll redefine how to make those sounds, and it's going to tell us why they are where they are, and all those different sorts of things. So there's a lot to learn, but thank you guys for staying on the journey. You know, gives us all an opportunity to learn. I learn just as well as you do. So tonight, this is talking about both prepositions and noun endings. Okay, a preposition basically tells you about time and space. Time and space, okay? Letting you know where you're going from, or you're going to somewhere, or basically at what time, you know. So we're going to see that here, because you got to go from one place to the next, and it's a certain space of time. So prepositions give you the position in time and space, okay? And that's what they're for. The endings on nouns, okay, are can be used on verbs. So we have noun endings like, ka, meaning you, or I, e, meaning my, kim, meaning them. So these things can pretty much be placed. This is nothing but a big puzzle. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. So, generally when you get a puzzle, I used to love puzzles until they brought the ones without, with all the scenery and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, it said 3,000 pieces. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that one because there's too many pieces. I just want to hurry up and get it done. Well, in the Hebrew language, it's over, those are the pieces. There's a lot of pieces and there's a lot of rules. And so you're never going to master all of it. So should you quit? Should you give up? No, you got to keep going and you got to stay in it, because the more you see it, the more you're going to absorb it. Like we talked about this being a family of language and letters and how they have a relationship to it. I mean, Dr. Yared, I don't think you understand how many times your name is literally like mentioned in the Torah. It's in the Torah. It's all over the Torah. It's even in his teaching here. It's in our teaching. It was our teaching today. I didn't point that out because I don't want to put you on the spot, but your name was mentioned like at least 15 times. Yeah. Along with my name, Dawid. So it's okay. So it means something. All right. So here it is. The puzzle is a 3. Remember, and I'm going to send this to you. So we're just going to go over what we do know. How many letters do you need to have a root? A child root, more specifically.
A child root.
Child.
You need
three.
Three. Thank you. It was 2 for a parent. Remember, you got 2 parents, and if you have an extra one, then brings in a child. Okay, that's all you got to remember. All right. So basically, what we're going to do is you're always going to look for the root. Always going to look for the root. So in this word right here, what's the root? What are the letters?
Shin, Mem, and Resh.
Yes. Shin, Mem, and Resh. And so we know what that is. That's Shamar. Okay. We know that. Shamar. That's the root in its third person, right? It's perfect. So when they throw that extra little cough on the end, the final cough, that's you. Okay. So now it's taking, and of course, this is talking about a form called a makor. And the form basically is this, okay, this is the vowel, and then that little dot, or it could be this and the wa. That's what that form is. That's all it's telling you. And with this form, it's just different rules, and it lets you know that something is in its present tense. Okay. So here is saying now, you have these examples, here's Shamor, Daber, and these are the forms of the makor. Okay. And so they're letting you know, according to the rules, that you can add different letters to the end. You can add that ka right there. Okay. And you can also add a preposition to the front of it. Okay. So when we look at this right here, what's the 3-letter root?
Still Shamar.
Shamar, thank you. So all they did is add a preposition, which is the bet, and bet means in or with. Okay, so just put something on the front of the root. And what's on the end? Oh, you. Okay. All right. So they're telling us that this rule is in and with, which is a preposition, can also mean at the time. At the time. Don't let it confuse you. It could be just 2 different ways. It could be in or with or at the time. With this particular form, you're going to have all kinds of forms. You're always going to have forms. You got a semi-coup form, where you drop certain letters off. You got different forms all the time. So the more you see it, you'll get used to it. Like, oh, that's this form. You got 2 nouns next to it. Oh, that's a form. I can't wait till you go into the absolute and infinitive form, all different types of forms. But today we're just dealing with the makor form. And we're dealing with what you can add to the front of it, a preposition, and what you can add onto the back of it. Okay. Again, same root. But what did they do? They added something to the end, and that's the kim, right? They added that. All right. And what is that? That's some plurality. So you can see they just add pieces to the root. That's it. So you can add it on the back and you can add this one onto the front. And this one here, which is a cough, means like. But it also, because it's dealing with this in particular form, it also means at the time. Just like this one, at the time. Why? They don't tell you. They don't tell you what it is. You know, if I told you something was blue, guess what? It's blue. Don't try to figure out later. You can put the two different colors together. You can put yellow and green together, and that's how you come up with blue. That's a little bit deeper level. Okay. But that's how things are in layers. But right now, for the purpose of learning, don't worry about why it's at the time. Don't worry why this one is a bet with the 2 dots underneath, and this one's a cough with the 2 dots under, and they're both exactly the same. They're confusing me. No, they're not. They're just telling you what it is. So just accept it. Okay. Some things we're just going to have to accept without getting the understanding. Just like in the Torah. When you're reading the Torah during the week, a lot of times you don't get the understanding. You want the understanding so badly. You're like, I want it now. Yah doesn't give you the understanding until later. until he feels like that you really want to know it. Okay. I didn't get that idea this morning about the word that I said, oh, it's about pressure. I didn't think about this word whatsoever during the whole week of reading the Torah. It never came to me until this morning. So that's what this all is about. Okay. So same thing here. The mem is from, it's a preposition. Okay. And then devar is the 3-letter. That is the 3-letter root. So if you know your roots, you're good. Then you start figuring out what these ends are. So this little yod right here with the dot, what they call it yod correct or correct yod dot, and then the yod. Okay. That's an E sound, 2 E's. When it's just a dot by itself, it's an I sound, like as in it. Okay. We're going to go over that. Don't worry about it. Okay. But what we're saying is right now, I'm not talking about the sound. I'm talking about what it means. This right here, that dot and this one here, the yod is my. Okay. My. That's what it means. So when you look at it, you go my and then speaking. And then what? From my speaking. From my speaking. So you can see how your eyes have to go from my speaking. So you say the position first, okay? And then you think about who it is that it belongs to, and then you say this. That's how you translate. And that's what could be a little challenging, because usually words that we see, we just want to say them and be done with it, and we understand it. Not in Hebrew. Hebrew has a root system. And that's why I keep going back to the root. You know the roots, you know that this particular word, midaberi, has to do with speaking. When you hear that I on the end, E on the end, medaberi, that E right there, oh, it's my. See? And then the me means from. So we have to get used to saying different sounds. And if you want to remember what from is, all you got to do is go, That's the sound. That's the sound. See? So it's based on sounds and vibrations. So if you hear that, you'll know that's from. You know? I'll say, shamar. What does that mean?
From
Yes,
guarding.
from guarding. All I got to do is put that me on it. Mishmar. You already got it. So you hear that it's from. So you hear that l, it's to. As soon as you hear that b, it's in or with. And in this case, because of the type of form we're dealing with, and when you look at it, you're looking now. We're reading. We're not just hearing sounds. So there's this idea that I want you to get in your mind. Things, you're going to see a lot of things with your eyes, and you're going to hear some things with your ears. Okay. So you're going to hear things, and the things that you're going to hear are the sounds, but you don't know what those sounds are until you use your eyes to see it. to see the, this or that. You got to see those things. So once you memorize what those little things mean, the dot and the yod and this and these three dots and all, you memorize what those sounds are, okay, and what they look like, then you'll know, well, oh, that's the sound. And then when you go to understanding what it literally means, when you hear it, you'll be like, oh, I know what that means. So you need both your eyes and your ears in order to understand language. I said something in my teaching about your eyes being what you use to give an account. When Yah talks about when you see your brother's ox or when you see your brother's donkey or when you see, so your eyes are making you custodians over, that what you see, and they're not only custodians, but they're your witnesses too. Okay. And so, because you're witnessing this and you're being custodian of it, you have to start thinking like that. I'm responsible for that which I see. So don't look at things and just look at it and just like, okay, I just saw it and that's it, move on. That's like looking at your brother's ox going somewhere and you say, I don't want to deal with it. Yah's telling you and I have to take responsibility for that which comes before our eyes. That's why the Hebrew language is so powerful. It's because it makes you custodians over the words that the Most High has said. And that's what should encourage you to continue your study. You shouldn't study this because you just want to, go around and speak the language. What you want to do is you want to study it so you can understand what the Creator's talking about and be a custodian over that which he said. See? And often people don't want to do that. They just want to hear it and look at it, but they don't want to really take it. So I'm saying today, look at it, hear it, and take custodianship over it. Be a custodian over it. Does that make sense? So, they're going to give you some different examples on how different words are used. So you can read through that. We're going to look at number 6. It talks again, like these are the 3 forms. And a form is just, the way that it lays out. Here's one. Because this one and this one means exactly the same thing. They're just spelled differently. That's all. Same shin, same shin, same mem, same mem, same resh, same resh. This one just has a dot over here, and this just has this underneath here. That's it. They mean exactly the same thing. Okay. And daber, it means to speak. But what they did was they're saying, when you look at this, you got to know when you see it in this way, when you see it like this, with this ah underneath it, you should know that is a makor. When you see it with the two dots underneath it like that, then you should know that it's a makor. You should know that's a form. And because it has a certain form, there's certain rules to go with that form. That's all. Okay. And that's the part that we have to be custodians over. So we know what the letters look like. We're taking custodian over that, but we haven't really taken custodian over the rules and how this works. Okay. Daber, this is just a form. Usually it would just have the ah underneath it like this, and then the next one would have that. This is a regular, form of it just being a 3-letter root, but they changed it. They went from this to the ah here, the pathak, open, and then bear, but it's just a form, right? So they're telling us in this in particular thing that these forms here are the same ones that we just discussed that have things can be added onto them in the front of them, can also be translated as to guard, and you don't even need the lamed. You don't need the lamed to add to this for this to mean that. See, and they're going to give us an example. They said, we learned so far that the makor forms, which are these 3 right here, there's 3 forms of them. And you memorize them if you want, or when you come to the point where you're reading the Torah, you'll be like, oh, that's a makor, and what's the rule? That's all. You'll translate it as guarding, ing, because it got the little dot right here to let you know that's ing. Here's another dot right here, it's ing. This one doesn't have that little dot. Well, the form tells us that it's an ing, okay? And we know that. Once we see it in these little vowel points underneath the var, oh, that's an ing. That's a participle. That's going on as we speak. But they're telling us here that is also too that these words can translate to guard or to speak. And there's no need. And though there's no lamed added to it, it still means that. Why? Don't know. I don't know. I just accept the rule. That's all. So you can see it means guarding or it means to guard. Now, are you going to remember all this? Of course not. You're going to take a little bit of information. Probably what you'll remember today is like, okay, we went over the puzzle, because all of us, even as kids, we love puzzles. So I'll remember the roots. I'll remember there's some forms, but other than that, I won't get that until you start reading. Okay. That's why I'm going through this a little bit quicker, because we got to finish it. And during the week, you can look at it and breeze over and so forth and so on. Okay. So here's some examples of these two different usage, okay, of Makor form. And then they give you those examples right there, right? And in the day of the hearing of her husband, they got it right there. They show you what it looks like. You know, they did not desire to hear the Torah, you know? And so the way that it's written tells you, it's like, oh, it means here, hearing, but down here, Shemoah means something totally different. It means to hear. This one means the hearing of, and this one means to hear. Two different types of translations. Words are exactly the same. Shemoah, Shemoah, vowel points exactly the same. So they're telling you the rule for the Makor form has two. There's two different ways that it could be used. One for the hearing of, like a semi-ku form, or it could be the desire to hear. See, so it's two different ways. So when you come and you're reading the Torah, you would know, oh, this doesn't mean that. It means to. It's not just hearing. Okay, so I say, Wa'im bayom shemoah isha. Okay, and if in the day of hearing her husband, you know, the next one underneath, the lo de avu et shemoah Torah, and they have kai right there, hi, which is really Yahweh. All right. So I would have to know the difference between the two. It could be translated. And how would you know what the difference is? The difference will tell you the translation of it when you try to make sense of it. Okay. When you know how to read and you understand what the words are being used. Translation, everything is not just the words themselves that are important. It's what the whole structure of the sentence means. And this is where you get a little like, well, I'm confused. I don't know. You know, so that's kind of confusing. Something like this, you're going to have to really look at yourself. I'm going to send you over the answer sheet so you can study it and look at it. So you can come to your own understanding of how you hear it and how you see it. Okay. I'm just letting you know there's two different rules that apply to that word or form called Shemoah. One is the blank of, and the other one is to hear. Okay. Also the same thing for going and eating, you know, and it can also mean to go. So those are the things that you have to look at. There are two different ways. Number 7 says you have to be careful. Why? Because some of these forms, right, which we would call the Makor form, can be misinterpreted as a command. You got to know the difference between a command. Some of these operate as a command. And the reason why they're saying this is because of the way that the vowels are underneath it. Like, for example, when you got the shin and you got these two dots underneath there, right? That automatically tell you, oh, that's a command form. That's a command. I already know that. If I got a dalit with those two dots underneath there, that's a command. That's what I would think. But they're saying, oh, because it's in my core form, it can either mean a command or it can mean to. It can mean guarding, or it can mean to guard, or it can mean a command. So how would you know which one is the command and which one is the guarding and which one is to? And again, it's always going to be about what the context of the sentence is saying. You got to look at what's being spoken. Okay. And then they give you some examples about here about how that works. Right. So one is, now speak, please, to the king. You know, Wayata daber na the el hamalek. So you would say that wouldn't go now to speak, please, to the king. No, it doesn't. That doesn't make sense. You would know that this is the bar right here is a command, just based on the sentence and the structure and what's in it. Like, for example, and now. That tells you right now that, hey, this is a immediate. So that's why I'm asking you to do daber, meaning a command, please, to the king. It wouldn't make sense now to say now to speak to the king. It wouldn't make sense. Okay. Just like at the sentence above it, the lamadu, that means for them to learn or to taught, right? They taught their tongues to speak lies, right? So this would, lamadu means they taught what? The lashonam, their tongues, and then you don't say, speak lies. No. So you got to know the difference between, they look exactly the same, but they have two different translations. And that's what they're telling you. Okay. That's what they're going to tell you here is that, you know what? That the context of the sentence makes sense. So be aware that you can have a word that looks exactly the same. And you got to try to figure out whether or not it's talking to or whether it's giving a command. And that's basically what this is telling us about. Okay. Number 8, the irregular verbs in the Macon form. Again, this is found on page number 84 and 85. That says when you add certain prepositions to a root, that root will, drop off certain letters. And so they give you these examples right here, how, I'll just go over one or two of them, how when you say irregular, that means that they're not going to be the same. Some certain letters are going to drop off. So for example, let's look at the first one, okay? The root is ra'ah, and that means he saw. That's perfect, right? But to see, you would throw a lamed. That lamed means to, and then ra'ah means to see. Okay, so it's not going to be this one, ladra'ah. It's not going to be that. It's going to go lir'oth. And that's what they mean by it being irregular, because you would automatically think, well, if it's ra'ah, then here's a ra'ah, and then you just put a lamed on it. And that's just simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But guess what? No, this in particular one is what you call irregular. So they change up the verbs, the vowel points, and they add certain letters, and that's why it's irregular. So you got to be aware of that, but you only get that when you read it, okay? Same thing here of your name, Yerad or Yerad, right? Yerad means he went down, okay? So you would think, well, let me just put a lamed on the front of it, and then here I'll keep this exactly the same, and it'd be the same thing, but no, you can't do that. They're saying that certain letters have to drop off, and on page number 84 and 85, you're going to see that rule that tells you like, okay, you got a yod, a resh, and a dalet. Okay. So here you got you're adding the lamed, which is the preposition. Then you got the resh, and then you got the dalet, but it has a tav added to the end of it. Well, how did that happen? Well, it's missing a letter. What happened? The letter yod is missing. So you don't even see it. The letter yod is missing. It's completely missing. So if you don't know this rule, you would, if you don't know your roots right here, if you don't know your roots, your 3-letter roots, and you can't recognize it, you would never figure out a resh and a dalet and a tav. You would think it's a complete different word. See? So one is a yod, a resh, and a dalet, right? And then all of a sudden it changes, and you got this now, and you got a lamed on the front of it. So you're like, wait a minute, this is not Yored. This don't look like Yored. But if you know the rules on how things work and how certain letters will fall off and how things become irregular, then you would understand it. And if you notice, the vowels, the voweling underneath it is completely changed. The vowels are completely different than the vowels that are on here. So when you know that and you see like, okay, these are the different vowels are changing. So it underwent some type of change. I think that's the point that I want to make too, is in the Hebrew language, if you see something that went from these two and all of a sudden it becomes like this, with these vowel points underneath here, you say there is a change. There has to be some change. And the reason why there's a change is because the structure of the root has changed, because you're adding something to it. It's like, I think like I want to give a great example. All right, you're adding okay, so you're modifying. You're modifying this root. You're changing it in some kind of way. You're adding to it. If you add to it, you can't leave it the same. That's just the point. Anytime you make a change to something that's in its original state and you add something like this letter right here, is going to change this, is going to convert from this and change into this because you're making some changes. You're making a modification. And that's in life. If you add anything to that which is original, it modifies and has to change. So once it changes, the sound has to change. The letters have to change. It goes through some changes, right? So you have to know what those changes are, okay? Like here, Yorad, right here, La Redeth. You see, you would never know that if you didn't understand the changes. Okay, so you got to pick this kind of stuff apart and be like, okay, well, what happened? Well, let me look and see if I can find the root. Well, that's a lamed on the front. So is there a word called lavred? Is there a word? Have you ever heard of a word called lavred? No. There's no 3-letter root of a lamed and a resh and a dalit. There's none. I've never seen one. Okay. So you say, well, we went under some changes. And there's a tav on the end. So you'd be like, okay, well, does words usually end in a tav? No, they usually end in a hey. And if they're not in a hey, excuse me, they're not in a hey, that means that there was another letter that's missing. So what are our 4 letters that generally have to fall off? Do you remember?
Yona.
Yona, a yod, right? A wa, a noon, and a hey. You understand? So it'd be a yod, a wa, a noon, or hey, and they'll drop off. Okay. And if they drop off, it's because you're adding something to that root. Same thing here, yalad, okay, or yalak here. So it went from yalak to lalaketh. Well, I've been reading the Torah for a long time, so I know what this means because I'm always looking for this kind of stuff. Lek, which is a lamed and a kaf. But if it's a lamed and a kaf by itself, like we went over today in our class, it'll be a lamed and a final kaf. And that means to walk. And in this case, he went. That's what you do when you walk. You went somewhere, okay? It's the staff in the palm of the hand, which is walking, which is, that's what a shepherd does, okay? So lalaketh. So it went from yalad to he went to lalaketh, to go. The to right here is the lamed, and the go is the laketh. Okay. So what happened? The yod disappeared, right? I added the lamed to it. And then they said, well, if that disappears, the rule is add that tav onto the end of it. And that's it. Okay. So you're not going to see la yalak. You'll never see this. You'll never see la ra'ah. You'll never see it. You're going to see these formations. And therefore, because you're seeing them, you recognize them and say, oh, they went under some type of change. The vowels are different, 3 dots. If you notice, they're all 3 dots when you got that lamed on there, okay? And here, liroth. That's all. So go back to page number 85 to kind of, get back familiar with that. But just for class sake tonight, just understand that there's changes. That's all I want to tell you. That anytime you add any letters to a root, it changes this. It changes the letters, and then it also changes the sound because the vowels have changed. Here's the puzzle. Here's the 3,000 pieces of puzzle that you look at and you're like, oh man, this is a lot. I don't want to do this anymore. I give up. I don't know what this is. It's very simple. It's not hard at all. Okay. So let's make it easy. Let me just make it easy for you. All right. So let me change my color so it won't be that bad. So here, every letter right here are what they call prepositions. Okay. 2 for the lamed at the time, because we're in this form, okay, but it can also mean in or with, but because the form that we're in the makor, it means at the time. The mem, from, hasn't changed. The kaf, at the time. That's all it is, okay? And then it underwent some type of change because it's not lakath, right? If it's lakak, then I would know, well, okay, so what happened? Well, I'm pretty sure that the original word, because I know from my vocabulary that it'll be a lamed, I know this next word would be a cough, and I know this next one would have been a ket like that, lacock. But this says lacoth. Also went under some changes. Oh, because I added the lamed to the front of it. You're right. The one of the lameds dropped off, and then it changed it added a letter here because I got rid of a letter. So they added the top on the end. Oh, okay. Same root. The root is all the way down. If you notice that, the same root is all the way here. It's the cough, the ket, and the tav. Okay. So is there a word with a cough, a ket, and a tet or a tav, excuse me? No, there is no word in the Hebrew language for this. None. Where there's a lamed and there's a cough and there's a ket. I know that. So you have to familiarize yourself with the roots. If you don't understand the roots and you haven't studied them and memorized those things, you would never figure this out. Okay. You would never understand the rules of changing. Okay. So they're going to tell you how it goes from here, meaning to take or taking, to what? To give, giving. Same thing. You see? That's what it is. Now, this one here is coming, they're letting you know that it has to give. So give is Nathan. I'm writing it in English, or what you would call Natan. Okay. Get this back again. The Natan. That's to give. That was the name of the prophet that came to David. Okay, it means he gives, right? Which is a noon, a tav, right? And another noon, final noon. That's what it is. But you see up here is different. There is no, I don't even see not one noon. All the noons are gone. Why? Because it underwent some changes. Okay. And again, it's one of those letters of the yod, the wa, the noon, or the hey. And if it's one of those letters, it's going to drop off. And in this case, it dropped off. Okay. So that can confuse you because you would like, I thought it's being Nathan. No, it's lathaith. That means to give or giving. Okay. So go over that when you get an opportunity. Don't be afraid of it. Just look at the roots and look at what's added. Don't be intimidated by how many the pieces are, because the pieces here are exactly all the same, right? And then they give you an example here on how that works. And of course, when you look at it, they show you what you can add to the front and what you can add to the back. You can add stuff on the front of it and you can add here. If you notice, it's about adding to what? To the actual root or how the root went through some changes. So that's a lot to memorize, but you're not going to do this to memorize it. You're going to do it just to read it and to try to take your time to wrap your mind around it. Okay. Same thing here. Same thing. So when you get this lesson and you get your homework, you'll be like, man, that's a lot. Well, this is not built to make you get discouraged, but it's just showing you all the different ways how it's being used. Okay. How you understand that, how it's irregular, how things have changed. So you have to go back to page 84 and 85. You'd be like, okay. They're using the plus signs to let you know how you're adding everything. They're giving you some more examples on how that works. So that's all exactly the same thing. Okay. One other rule that you need to understand, talking about rule number 9 to continue, is dealing with prepositions. And more specifically, it's talking about the letter mem. And we know the letter mem and the word, because prepositions come in what they would call letters by themselves, and they also come in word form. So a mem is from. Okay. And this word min means from as well. So it can either be this one as a letter, or it can actually be a word like this one right here. Min. All right. And there's more to this than just what they're saying right here. This other book that I have breaks it down even further, which it can be, it's amazing. But all we want to know for tonight is that the mem letter can be either a word or a letter. Okay. It still means the same thing. Right. So let's see. The letter mem, they're going to tell us something about it. It says on page number 16, this letter mem was added onto the front of a noun, means from, which we've already learned. like, from Moshe, meaning Mem Moshe. Now we're going to learn another usage. So it has another usage. So what other usage could it mean? Well, if the Torah wants to express a concept of more than, it uses the letter Mem. See, so there's just another rule. So it can mean from, or it can mean more than. And here's examples, so Varok, Menashim, Yael, okay? So the Tavorok means she blessed. She's blessed from, here's the men, it's in there. You can't see it, all of it, but it's in there. They just went from a final noon, which you got up here at the top, to a regular noon, and they put a dot in it to let you know that that dot right there, it represents that noon. It's on this word here, men, right here. That's some other stuff you got to learn about why those dots are there and what they represent. So she, which we know that is this tav right here, she shall be blessed more. Here's the more than, and the Nanashim is women, and then Yael is her name. She's blessed more than women. Or I could say she's blessed from among. And if she's blessed from among women, that means that she's blessed more than women. That's what it means. So it can either mean more than, or it can mean from among. I particularly like from among better than what they're saying. It means exactly the same thing, though. But I think when you talk about someone being blessed from among women, means that you're set out aside from the rest of them, not just more, but you're really set from them. And it's kind of easy to remember from among, from, because the letter mem has to do with the word from. That's why I like it more than you just saying the mem means more, because that can be a little confusing sometimes, So from among is another way you can look at it as well. Okay. So those are the different ways that you can use the mem. So you can see the prepositions, they have rules that apply to them. They have different features and functions that can change as well. And so they give you some examples here, how you can add men to different words, and you can come up with, from me, mimini, that means from me. You hear that E on the end? That's me. Mimaka, that's from you. Mimake, that's from you, but it's a singular female, right? Miminu, from him or it, okay? Or mimina, right? But I do want to point out one thing to you, because this is what got me. This says miminu, and that means from him or it, okay? This says miminu too. So how do you know that? And this means from us, right? So how would you know the difference? They look exactly the same. How would you know it's from him or from it or from us? How would you know they're exactly the same word? What would determine that?
The word before.
Yes, it's the context. It is the context of the sentence. Like, okay, is it talking about a group of us? And you would see a word that have, a plural ending. That's why you would know it's from us, because it would have other words that are plural. If it's just singular, like miminu here, then it wouldn't have the plurality either on another noun or a verb. It wouldn't have it, because remember, this is a preposition that's being added to certain endings are added, like your noun endings. You can add those noun endings, like the yod and which is me. I forgot my yod looks ugly. Or this one right here is plurality of them, sons, Bnei Yisrael, or the mem or the im right here, saying depending on what form it is, or it could have the noon or the mem on the end with this vowel point right here, meaning them. Okay. So you can have all these different endings put on a different word. It could be kem, as you see right here, and that's ken, meaning feminine. So you got to remember that when you talk about masculinity, it would have a mem on the end of it. If it's femininity, it'd have this noon on the end of it. See, in both cases, you see it. Okay. Final noun, final mem. Right. So the context would tell you whether this is talking about something that's plural. So the next word would be plural, or some other word in that sentence would say that it was plural. Okay. So context tells you a lot. Often when you're translating, that's what you have to do. You have to look at the sentence and say, is there anything else here talking about that? Okay. So they have words that are exactly the same. And here's another example. When you have the word, here you go. Tomar. Okay. This is a word called tomar. Okay. Tomar means you will, was it tomar? That's just one. No, that's you will say. Okay. I don't like that color. I can't see it. Tomar, the tav in the front, and then here's the O, and then here's the mer. Okay. We know that this right here is not talking about, present tense. What it's saying is they removed the aleph and they replaced it with this little dot. But anyway, tomar can either mean that you here could be a masculine, or the you here can be feminine. Context, a lot. So my point is that context tells you whether or not it's a male speaking or you or a female, based on other verbs that are being used or other nouns that are being used. So in the Hebrew language, you're going to have to, when you do translations, you have to know, like, okay, is this, some of these words are exactly the same. Miminu is exactly the same here as miminu here. So I got to look for other words in my sentence to be able to tell me, hey, that's, singular or that's plural. That's the point I want to make. Again, here's another rule number 28. You're coming at a close. You only have like 2 more chapters and you're done. I don't think the other chapters 15 and 16 are not as long as 14. They're not. They are not long. But it says in occasion, the Torah will throw in an extra hey, just to let you know. And they give you some examples. And they say, they even tell you, we can't discuss it because, we'll come back to it. There's a reason, but we're not going to discuss it. We'll look at it later on in another book or some other work. It's not worthy for us to keep looking at it because it's just not going to be helpful and necessary. I would say the reason why you need to look at it is simply because you need to know that it does exist. So the language is telling you that, hey, there's going to be some things that you're going to know and there's some things that you're never going to know, at this point, just at this point in your studies. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, that's pretty much what he wanted to do. All right. So that's pretty much it, you guys, that I think your brain can take. I'm going to send you over the summary. These are the summary. Going back from rules, lessons 1 through 10, you said review those on page 86 to 88. Lessons number 11, all the way down to which you've been 11, 12, 13, and 14. That's going to be the breakdown for the summary of what you've learned so far. So all the rules, this is what I like about this, is that you can go look at the summary. All right. You can look at the summary before you even do your lesson and know, well, what am I supposed to be looking for? They're going to tell you. So anytime you want to refresh what happened, go back to your summaries. You don't have to go back through the whole lesson. Just go back and read the summary about the rules. That's all. It's a summary of all the rules. And that's the key to remembering, is rehearsing and reading the rules through the summary. Read the rules. It's a summary of all the rules they learned up to this point, because that's what you're learning. You're just learning rules. Okay. You're not learning how to read. You're not learning how to, what the vowel points are. You're not learning any of that. You're just learning on the rules on how the root works with different letters. That's all this book is about. Okay. And so in order for you to do that, I would recommend, right, to help us along, go back and read the summaries. And when you read the summaries, that's all you got to do. That's all you have to do is read the summary, and it'll stick a little bit longer And you're like, oh, I remember that. But I only remember that because I read it in the summary. You see? So you can do all those things. So it seems like a lot, but it's not. You've already been over this information. Okay. I think that's one of the best parts about this in particular teaching and how they got it. Okay. All right. So rules are going to continue. 13, rules on 14 that you're going to get. I'm going to send this over to you and you read it. And then, of course, your lesson. Now, just to let you know, on the left-hand side of the screen here, you have these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? When they talk about these numbers, they're right here. 1, where's the next one? Where's 2? Here's 2. Here's 3. Okay, here's 4, and here's 5. When you have those numbers there, what they're doing is they're telling you about words that they have never really taught you and expressed. So they're kind of helping you out to understand what you're supposed to be reading. Okay. So you don't get confused because you're like, I don't know what this word is. I've never seen that even in my studies. I don't even know what that is. Natsor, I never saw that. Well, again, it says guard. Well, how do you know it's guard? Well, just me knowing that, do you see those 2 dots underneath there? I know it's a command. That's why they're telling you that. Because they don't want you to get that confused with what? With the makor that you learned. You see? So that's the reason why I'm going to show it to you like that. All right. This word Elok here, that's them changing it. It's not that. His name is Elohim. So, and then they have this as part of their prayer book that you don't have. The Amida, I have it. It's just their prayer book that they came up with. So there's just words that they're using, but don't be worried. The words that they have, a majority of the words that they're expressing to us right here are in the Torah. What they've done is they've taken the rules and, the words, and they've applied it to their prayer book, their Amida prayer book. What they call it, Amida or the Amidah, and that's all it is. But the words are exactly the same. So don't get discouraged like, oh, well, I don't want to read that because it's not in the Torah. No, it's just them using their prayer book to bring out the words of the Torah. Okay. Shemot, you got Shemos. It's not Shemos, it's Shemoth with a TH on the end. The reason why they put that S there is because they're trying to change it and make it their own. That's all. So it's the same book as Shemoth. You look in the Torah, there's a Tav right there. Okay. They're really an oath like that. All right. So those are some of the things you're going to look at. So go through each one of these and pronunciation and all that kind of stuff. Just work on your pronunciation. If you have some problems, let me know. Email me and let me know. Well, hey, I want to know how to say this, and explain that rule to me again. All right. And then when you start reading your Torah portion, you'll start reading it in Hebrew, and then you'll get more out of it. That's the only way I was able to capture all the information about Yatzah, is because in English, they never mention the word Yatzah. They never mention it. So if you don't know what the word is and you're reading, the word Yatzah was all over the Torah portion. I swear there was over 25 to 30 places where Yatzah was mentioned. And I was only able to make that connection with the story with David when I was going through the motion of reading different things. And I wanted to know, it's talked about a man going out to war. And then I came across that story. I don't even know how I came across that story. And then I looked and I read into it. And that's when I found all this word about Yatzah. And I found the word shuv, meaning to turn and return and go out and come in. I was like, oh, there's a connection. So Yah uses that to show us the connections and how you could take stories. So the Torah is the foundation. And then you look at other examples in the story of the prophets and look at kings and judges, and Yah will begin to tell us and explain to you what the Torah really means. You see? So now today we learn what shuv means. We know that it's about captivity, but we also know it's about a prisoner, but we also know what it means to repent. We also mean it means springtime. We also know that it talks about returning. It also means, to restore. We also know all those different aspects. So the more that you stay with the language and the more you learn about these words, your vocabulary is going to increase, but also too, your understanding is going to increase. So the more that I study, I feel like I'm getting smarter and smarter every time I do a Torah portion, because I keep going through it over and over and over again. I get more understanding. The word that I shared with you today called ruach, very powerful. I didn't know all that today. I didn't know all that. I used the resh in the ket. That's a rock. But I put a right here, ruach. That's how you spell ruach. Okay, which is the Y in the middle. Okay, R right here is R, and then the U, and then the ak, it's vowel point, and the CH right here, ruach. Okay, right, and then we got the word rock, right, which we found out today that means path, right? So R, and then an A, and then a C, and an H. Then I said, oh, well, I reversed the letters and it went for a maquette and a resh instead of a resh and a ket. And that's car, C-H-A-R. It's just a reverse, C-H-C-H-A-A-R-R. So these work hand in hand. So car is anger and fury, okay, and anger, right? And then this one here is path and prescribed path and, traveler. Someone's traveling on the path. And this one right here is the wind. So what way it travels and the way the wind blows. So when you talk about Dawid is talking about my spirit, right? Which is wind and spirit or ruach, in your spirit, you find out the Yah's spirit is not some ghost that's just flying around like Casper the Friendly Ghost. You find out the Yah's spirit is a path. And what Dawid didn't want to do was to stay on that path, to get off that path. He wanted not to be alienated from that path, because if you alienate off that path, you're called wicked. And that's why he wanted so desperately for Yah to return him back to that path. You see? So these words are related. They're related. There's a positive aspect to words and there's a negative aspect to words. One of the words I didn't go over, which you and I know, but you can look it up, and it did tell you. It talked about a prostitute in our Torah portion, right? The word for prostitute is kodesh. A male prostitute is kodesh. A female prostitute is kodesh. That's the word for prostitution. And then also kodesh means to be set apart. Translated as holy, but we don't use that word because that's some Greek term. Set apart, right? So a prostitute could be set apart too for that type of work. So there's a positive and then there's a negative in every single way in the language. You got the word Uzziah, right? Yah is my strength. He's my strength. Yah, my strength is Yah. That's the guy who ruled for 52 years. Okay. There's another king called Uzziah, and he got Zazarat. Why? Because he didn't use Yahweh as his strength. You can have a positive name with a negative result. You see, you got a choice. You can stay positive or you could be negative. And that's what he's trying to let us know. There's words in there to tell you that. So that's a little something I wanted to share with you as well, to let you know the power of the language. I hope you guys enjoyed your lesson today. Any questions? No questions? Well, I say Lila Tov to you. And I say shalom, and I'll send this over to you as soon as I get an opportunity.
Lila Tov and shalom.
Lila Tov, you guys have a great week. You have an awesome week of beginning tomorrow. Hallelujah. If like Akolsi Pamela says, if Yah says so, if he's willing, you see? Hallelujah. Praise be to the living Elohim.
Shalom.
Shalom, everyone.